How will the future police workforce look?
Future of law enforcement lies in technology.
It's an intelligent system. It will generate alerts based on the rules that have been configured.
It is a perfect amalgamation of technology with human effort.
We are very good in responding. Preparing for the future is something completely different.
For a country like India, which is overpopulated, law enforcement are understaffed, overworked, technology becomes a boon.
When we move into the 3D scanning world, we can able to offer more than 1 million points per second. It's all inside the software which does everything for you.
It's all about data, data, data.
Well, I really think that we're entering the golden era of forensic DNA worldwide.
AI could be used on a multitude of things. It's just how do you kind of make sure that the data you're getting gets smarter and the machine you're using gets smarter.
What I see at the moment, that developments are so quickly that the police needs to be in a constant change of adjusting. It's not only being innovative, it's also constantly apply the innovation to your daily practices.
I think the most powerful tool right now in forensic science is this idea of DNA testing, because it gives you a who. With the who, or the identity of a person, you can allow the law enforcement to go on in their investigations. Without the idea of a who, it's like, where do you start your investigation?
The evolution of a DNA program is typically countries start by taking DNA from crime scenes, analyzing it, and comparing it to a known suspect. The O.J. Simpson case in the United States is a perfect example. They had a crime scene from the murder scene, they had O.J.'s DNA, they compared the two to see if they had a match.
So once upon a time, you needed a huge amount of sample. Big blood stains, big semen stains. Sensitivity from the technology now allows you to pick up DNA from a few cells. So what we are talking now is literally DNA profiles from something that you touched. And that has opened up a whole new paradigm change in the kind of cases that can be addressed using DNA testing.
Next-generation sequencing is a new type of technology that allows the scientists to go much deeper. For example, if you have DNA on a door handle and you have 5 different persons' DNA on that door handle, the technology can break through that now and get through those mixtures. If you have degraded DNA, where the blood has been out in the weather for months, you could find the DNA through that degraded type of DNA, or different types of DNA. It doesn't have to be blood anymore. It can be skin cells. It could be pieces of, or just a little bit of saliva. Anything that's small can now develop full DNA profiles to give reliable evidence that it belongs to a specific person.
The value of DNA profiling is best seen when you're able to match the DNA profile to a known individual. However, when such a known individual, for example, a suspect or a victim, is not available, the profile is reported as being from an unknown person. So in such situations, it is not of much help for law enforcement when they see unknown person in our report. So what they can sometimes request for is something known as DNA phenotyping.
When we are talking about DNA phenotyping, that's quite a different ballgame. We are actually trying to predict what the person may look like in terms of appearance. And predominantly right now, we are talking about hair color, eye color, skin color, and the ancestry of that person as well as the age of that person. So it's predictive in nature, it's not unique to that person.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies. Thank
Hi.
you very much for taking the time this afternoon to be here.
You're here today because we're going to conduct a little interesting experiment.
In this experiment, one of you, we don't know who, provided a blood sample to our laboratory. The purpose of this blood sample was for us to try to predict ancestry, age, and phenotype. And based on these predictions, we will arrive at who donated the blood samples and eliminate the others who didn't.
Sorry, ladies, before we start the test, I would like to find out, may I ask which country are you from?
America.
And so in population genetics, America would probably be classified under Caucasians. And you, ma'am, may I ask where you're from?
Indonesia.
Indonesia, so Indonesia would probably be Southeast Asia ancestry. And you, ma'am?
I'm from Singapore.
Singapore, okay. Asian ancestry for sure. And you, ma'am?
India.
India, so that would belong to South Asia ancestry. All right, ladies, so the first test that we performed was DNA phenotyping. And the results that we obtained was the contributor of the blood sample had black hair and brown eyes, which clearly show that you are not the person who contributed blood.
Could you please show us the placard?
I did not.
Thank you. And may I check with you, ma'am, if your hair is, what's the color of your hair?
Black.
Okay, you're still in the game. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We are only able to look at black, brown, red or blonde hair color, blue, brown or intermediate eye color, which in a Singapore context or Asian context is not all that relevant because everybody has black hair and brown eyes.
Much of the technology and development was all Caucasian driven. So most of the markers, the studies, the association, the genetics and all of that was based on data from the West. So now when you want to go towards the East Asian, where you have such a huge genetic and biological diversity in this part of the world, a lot of research is not quite ready.
And now Ramani will move on to perform his ancestry prediction.
So for the ancestry prediction from the blood sample, it is first conducted at the continental level. This shows that the blood donor of the blood sample was likely of East Asian origin. We also ran a more higher resolution analysis with ancestry. And this showed that the population of origin of this blood sample was localized to the coastal regions of China. If we look at the breakdown of the populations which are most likely in this region, we can see that the top few are either from Hakka, Han Taiwanese, Han Chinese from Beijing, Koreans or Japanese. So all these point towards most likely region of origin as East Asia. So ma'am, I would just like to find out which part of India you said you were from?
I'm from Bombay.
You're from Bombay. So Bombay is, as part of India, is, in terms of population genetics, is considered to be part of South Asia. You are not likely to have been the donor of the blood sample. Could I please confirm with you?
Sure. I'm not.
So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
A body was found actually in the desert, which was beheaded, and no hands are there, and therefore there is no fingerprints to identify, leaving only DNA actually as an evidence to identify this victim.
DNA phenotyping is the use of DNA and genetic markers to predict the appearance of a person. Because if you can tell the law enforcement this person has a particular kind of hair color, skin color, eye color, if you can potentially in future go even further, shape of the face, shape of the nose, shape of the eyes, that will allow the law enforcement to narrow down the possible suspects.
In this experiment, one of you, we don't know who, provided a blood sample to our laboratory. The purpose of this blood sample was for us to try to predict ancestry, age, and phenotype.
Okay, ladies, so the next test that we'll be performing is the age prediction test.
So, the donor of a blood sample is predicted to be 45 years old with an error of ±5.
But may I ask, what is your age, ma'am?
39.
39. And ma'am, what's your age?
I'm 44.
44.
So given what we have found out about the DNA sample so far, we feel that you, ma'am, are the most likely donor of this blood sample. So thank you very much for your time. What do you feel about the testing that we did here?
Yes.
It's pretty accurate, but it was a very good finding to actually find out that I had ancestries from what? The Han?
Taiwanese
Han, yes.
Yes.
Which I didn't think of it as at all.
Ma'am, can I ask what's your dialect group?
I'm actually Hokkien.
Hokkien, right.
Which is still at the coast.
The coastal lines,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's a good find, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
The idea behind this phenotyping is to predict some possible appearance, and it could indeed serve as intelligence to help law enforcement narrow down the possible list of suspects. But by that very same concept, when you are narrowing down possible suspects, you are actually serving to eliminate a lot more other people who are not related to this case. So reality is, it can help to solve crime, bring down the number of possible suspects, focus the kind of law enforcement resources towards a more expeditious solving of the crime.
As you know, actually, Dubai has more than 200 nationalities living in here, and this diversity gives such a technology an advantage actually in narrowing down people who are suspected to be involved to a certain crime scene. A body was found actually in the desert, which was beheaded, and no hands are there, and therefore there is no fingerprints to identify, leaving only DNA actually as an evidence to identify this victim.
What they did then is they used NGS technology and phenotypic SNPs to determine her ethnicity. And they realized that she was likely of Filipino descent. So they went out and did an investigation of which Filipino women had recently left. They actually had to go to the homes in which they were staying and get artifacts where they could get the DNA from these women. They developed a DNA database of them and was able to compare the DNA from the headless body and got a match to one of them. So that was how they identified the young woman that had been murdered in the desert.
Nowadays, with such technology, actually we are able to see or to narrow down the number of individuals by actually saying, for example, the suspect is more likely to be white in color, or the suspect is more likely to have black hair, or the suspect is more likely to come from this part of the world, and so on. Taking all of this information and integrate it together, along with investigating lots of different areas on a DNA, we can put an algorithm actually and produce a composite of that person. future we can see this one will be actually used as an evidence in a court, where actually this technology will be developed further with higher precision and accuracy.
Genealogy research, ancestry research has always been up and coming in this part of the world. It's just that it's not been that actively applied towards a crime casework setting. However, at the same time, it's opened up a whole new container of ethical and social questions that need to be addressed. People put their DNA profiles into that genealogical databases with the idea for them to find their long-lost relatives. No one quite anticipated that such genetic information is now going to be used without their knowledge, without their consent, to be hunting for a possible black sheep in a family.
There are many governments now looking at putting privacy policy behind the use of NGS, because the governments now have these tools to look deeper into your DNA code. Other than distinguishing me from you, you can look at these other things. So you have to be very careful about potential privacy risks.
People have thought of DNA as a magical tool, and I like to attribute it towards TV series. Sometimes they show this machine that shows a face that just pops up when you are putting in a strand of hair. The technology is not there yet. That does not mean we won't get there, but it's just not there for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
So when we talk about a accident scene, right, it actually consists of 4 different components: human, vehicle, road, and the environment, right, causing the accidents to happen. So with the laser 3D scanning right now, we can able to help them to capture all these 4 elements into the 3D imaging itself.
As a crime scene specialist, we are the professional forensic support in the investigation, and we have to bear in mind that we have to maximize evidence collection, because no matter what, at the moment we are at the crime scene, we only have one chance. We have the scene here today. It's a violent crime has actually occurred. As you can see, there's some blood stains also, and then probably an assault. So one of the factors that we may face at the scene could be that the perpetrator is still at large. The victim is injured and has to be conveyed. So we may not have any information at the scene itself, and we need to expedite it out to the investigation officer. For example, the investigation officer tell me, hey, I need the measurements for the height of the blood, I need the measurements, so if you find any weapon, can I get the length of the measurements to inform the medical officer how wide the chopper is and so forth. So if I'm going to use the traditional method of taking the manual measurements and so forth, it may take time. Again, time is always of an essence in investigation. This is the handheld 3D scanner. So basically for the handheld 3D scanner, it's actually a tablet with the 3D sensor. So the handheld scanner allows me to capture a 360 view.
So this is actually a major improvement when you talk about technology itself. When we move into the 3D scanning world, we can able to offer more than 1 million points per second. So that means we can have higher resolutions, right? At the same time, we can able to give you a 3D view of the entire scene, what is actually happening.
One photograph, I cannot tell the whole crime scene. So if I have a 3D scan and I can see a 360 view, I can see from the perspective, it makes me appreciate more. We are in a trial to actually see how these scanners can better in line with which type of crime scene. So that's where the current stage is. How are we going to use it to help our crime scene specialists? And at the same time, due to its quick scene investigation, how we can actually use this as a quick on-scene investigation for ourselves and also the investigation officer.
So when we talk about a accident scene, right, it actually consists of 4 different components: human, vehicle, road, and the environment, right, causing the accidents to happen. So with the laser 3D scanning right now, can able to help them to capture all these 4 elements into the 3D imaging itself, help them to analyze what is actually causing the accidents to happen.
I'm currently at the Fatal Accident Investigation team. We investigate cases where death occurs in an accident. Of course, when we do this, we also get assistance from the forensic to assist us with investigation.
When I want to shrink down into the crime investigations, right, the law enforcement are basically looking into things like blood spatter, right, bullet trajectory, right, to help them to investigate further. Typically, when you talk about a scene, right, whether this is going to be a crime scene, a fire scene, or it's a traffic accident, right, for the enforcer to carry out the duties, it will take a very long time, right? Usually, it will take up to a couple of hours. With the laser scanning solutions in place, they can able to capture the entire scene, right, within, maybe they want to do a different locations within the scene itself. It will take like about, less than 30 minutes.
The crime scene scanner would have given us a very accurate measurement of the lane marking and the tire marks and the brake marks. For certain cases, we also look at speed to see whether this accident involves speed. We also need to look at cases involving heavy vehicles, whether blind spot will be an issue to them. So these are the things that we require to look out for in an accident.
A 6-year-old boy has died after he was hit and pinned by a bus. The accident occurred this morning at Choa Chu Kang Avenue 5.
The police and the Singapore Civil Defence Force said they were alerted to an incident involving a bus and a pedestrian just after 9 a.m. Police said the 57-year-old bus driver is assisting with investigations.
I arrived at the scene within half an hour of the accident. Choa Chu Kang Avenue 5 is a 2-lanes road location. There wasn't any pedestrian crossing. So as the bus was travelling on the right side, the pedestrian came from his right to left. Not on the pedestrian crossing, but on the road itself. At this accident, we were investigating on whether the pedestrian was visible to the driver when he crossed the road. To have this done, we provided whatever evidence that we have, cameras from the bus, sketch plans, and the 3D scanner to HSA to ask them to analyze a blind spot analysis test.
So here in the Forensic Chemistry and Physics lab, the accident reconstruction team would receive cases from the police, and they would usually have a series of requests to determine the speed of a vehicle, how fast it was travelling, whether or not the driver could have seen the pedestrian or the bicycle as it crossed the path. And we would write expert reports and our opinions on that. I know based on the laser scans that I got from police, that the bus had stopped somewhere around this location here. The main issues typically with heavy vehicles is that they tend to have larger blind zones. There was also a fencing that was on the central median that may have contributed to visibility issues. So I mainly focused my attention and my scanning from the pavement on this side to capture the green railings from this side of the road. If you peer perpendicular through, you can see through it, but then if you're kind of oblique to it, it would tend to have a more occluded effect. So those were the main issues that I wanted to investigate. Then the next thing I had to do was to determine the blind zone of the bus. So typically heavy vehicles have a larger zone in which they cannot, it's called a blind zone, so that area that cannot be seen by the driver sitting in the driver's seat. Blind zones are determined off-site because the bus will be impounded. I will get a model driver to sit in the bus and then plot the areas that he can see and the areas that he can't.
Just up.
So, in the off-site location, once I have determined the points where he can or cannot see, I would then mark those locations and then 3D scan everything together. Then what I then do is to model in the planes and the points. There is a slight sliver here where the A pillar of the bus causes a diagonal solid obstruction. So this is a blind spot. Anything that is shorter than this plane is not visible. Anything that's sticking out of the plane would be visible to the driver. So that's basically how the blind zone analysis is done using the laser scanner. So this is just dealing with the bus itself.
When we talk about laser scanning itself, it actually consists of two parts. First of all, the equipment, which is the hardware itself. On the other hand, it's actually the software play a very important role because the laser scanning will able to capture the raw data for you, but the raw data won't able to help you to investigate further without a very good software solutions that you can put in place, right, to stitch the informations.
This captures the bus in its original location. So with these three main components, the 3D laser scans of the original fresh scene, the 3D scans of the subsequent revisit of the scene, as well as the off-site location 3D scans of the bus with the blind zones integrated, I can then put them all together in a 3D model. With the video footage in this case, we had an in-vehicle camera mounted on the bus that captured the bus as it was traveling down the road. And you can see the railings on the center divider. The video evidence integrated with the 3D laser scan data allows us to do what we call reverse photogrammetry, which allows us to determine the position of objects or items, the camera, the bus, relative to the rest of the objects in the scene. So as the bus moves forward, the camera moves along with it, and I match the view here, and that's how I determine how the bus has moved along the scene relative to the other vertical features. When the bus is in this location, the pedestrian is actually there. The main issue for obstruction is the red railings, yes. So I constructed a plane to the top of the red railings, you can see here. And then I placed the pedestrian, which is represented as a cylinder of the pedestrian's height. And you can see here that when I say it's mostly not available to be seen, I mean that there's only a small fraction of the height that is available to be seen above the plane. So anything below the plane is not visible, anything above the plane is visible. So now moving on to the point of collision. The main issue is no longer the railings, because the pedestrian is likely to have been in this zone at that point in time. If the pedestrian was here, it would be half the height would be visible. If the pedestrian was in this zone here, it would be blocked by the A-pillar. If it was right up to near the point of impact, which is on the bus here, then it would not be visible. So there's a range of scenarios in which he could be anywhere from completely visible, available to be seen, or completely not visible in this sliver here or close to the bus. And this is all produced in a diagram that would represent the various scenarios that may have occurred in this case.
With the evidence that we have from HSA, this case proceeded for coroner's inquiry, and the case was classified as unfortunate traffic misadventure. Unfortunate traffic misadventure means that the driver was not faulted for this accident, and it was the pedestrian who have crossed at the blind spot of the driver, and there was nothing the driver could do to avoid the pedestrian.
The benefit of the 3D laser scanner and 3D modeling in general is that it allows us to illustrate our findings in a more visual manner in 3 dimensions. I see that the scanner will become a very integral part of forensic analysis.
For the law enforcement sectors or in the industry itself, right? We would like to see that they will mandate 3D scanning, 3D laser scanning as part of the tool or evidence they can use it to present it to the court. We need to make sure that those countries like India, China, Japan, Korea, right, can able to adopt the technology, and rest of Asia will come and follow these adoptions in terms of 3D laser scanning.
CCTV are something which you need 24/7 monitoring. You just keep on seeing what is happening on what all places. But this is not that. It's an intelligent system. You can comb the whole region using the electronic eye surveillance. Initially, the journey was very difficult. When we thought of this thing and we tried to share with people, they said that it won't be possible. This is almost an impossible thing you guys are trying. The forest official said कि तुम चांद सितारे हमको तोड़ के यहाँ पर दिखाना चाहते हो लाके. That's what you are claiming.
If you are able to achieve it even 25% of what you are saying, that will be a miracle.
But we have achieved 100%. And now it's more than 100%.
We were very frequent visitor to national parks or wildlife sanctuaries. And a few friends of ours was also wildlife photographer. And then we were talking about what are the pain points in wildlife or forest department which technology may be helpful in solving that. In case of Bhopal, the major problem was man-animal conflict. Since Bhopal Reserve Forest is like 4-5 kilometers from the core of the city, you can see tiger like every now and then on roads, and it was a huge challenge for the forest staff to manage that.
What happens when you see tiger going to the places where there is human population nearby? It's a threat for tiger itself. Cases of poaching, electrocution and like poisoning are very common. The poachers don't need to get deep inside the forest to search the tiger and then stay there and kill it. It was easily available on the fringes, so it was basically kind of easy kill for them.
रात में पोचिंग एक बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है। कोई भी जंगल में चले जाओ, पोचिंग की संभावना बनी रहती है। उसको ट्रैक करने के लिए वी हैव गॉट 3 vehicles which are moving all around। एक ट्रैक टीम है जो कि 24 घंटे काम पर रहती है और व्हीकल से भी गश्ती होती है। ऑफिसर्स की ड्यूटी लगी हुई है जो हर 15-15, 7-7 दिन में रोटेशन से अपनी ड्यूटी कर रहे हैं, रात्रि गश्त कर रहे हैं। लेकिन उसके बाद भी मान लीजिए रात्रि गश्त करने कोई एक आदमी गया और मेरी रात्रि गश्त में मैं किसी स्पॉट से मैं 3:20 से निकल गया। 3:20, 3:30 में मैं आई वाज इन दैट एरिया। मैं निकल गया उस एरिया से, 3:40 पर घटना होती है। तो देयर इज ऑलवेज चैलेंज।
Average age of the foot patrolling staff is more than 50 actually. They are really hard workers, they are like serve their life in the forest, but the reality is that at certain age you cannot work that rigorously which is needed in the forest department. You have to walk a lot, you have to face a lot of animal conflicts and challenges related to that.
यहाँ से इधर गया है डगडगा गुफा क्षेत्र में वन महोत्सव।
So what we thought of installing electronic eye on this periphery close to the sensitive areas which are prone to human-animal conflict, poaching and all. The EI tower which you see is around 45 meters high. On top of the tower there is a thermal imager with a visual imager in parallel to that thermal imager. The whole feed is connected to the control room via the wireless network, that's point-to-point network. And this whole station is on solar.
Basically there are 4 towers, Miriakot, Mala Dongri, Kalikot and Jere. So these are the arrangements of these 4 towers. This is the Miriakot tower which we are looking at.
The camera which are mounted on the tower are having 5-kilometer range. They can rotate 360-degree continuously, which makes it around 75 square kilometer of area can covered by one tower. Bhopal is having 4 of them, which makes it around 300 square kilometer. There were a lot of wood theft cases, intruder cases. Other than that, there was one case in which one wild animal was like tortured by some villagers.
कई ट्रैक्टर ट्राली वगैरह जब्त किया हुआ है वन क्षेत्र से लकड़ी ले जाने वाले, और कई शिकारी लोग गाड़ी भी लेके घुसे हैं तो उनको भी हमने पीछा करा है, खदेड़ा है, तो इससे हमको कैमरे से काफ़ी मदद मिली है।
So what EI does, it helps us in doing the web patrolling. You can comb the whole region using the electronic eye surveillance. So that gives advantage to the forest department that they don't have to go there explicitly to see until and unless any activity is taking place or any sensitive thing is happening out there.
In the forest scenario, the camouflage is a very big problem while you are doing a monitoring. It's very difficult to distinguish between bushes and, let's say, deers or tiger hiding over there. So we come up with thermal technology, the best solution for that. Thermal technology makes this very easy because the objects which are living beings are identifiable because these are all hot-blooded species. Apart from that, thermal technology is also good when you are seeing through vegetation. So I'm not saying that like it can see through the vegetation totally, but at least it's increased visibility by 10 to 20%.
CCTV are something which you need 24/7 monitoring. You just keep on seeing what is happening on what all places. But this is not that. It's an intelligent system. We mine the data, we look at the history of the sensitive points, and then you train your camera and tell them, so you go to point A and you stay there for 30 seconds, then you go to point B, you stay there for 3 minutes, not 30 seconds. And that's how the whole 360 degree is covered with different tilts and different pans.
So in an auto mode, what happens, like there are predefined points where the camera will automatically move and watch those points, and if it find any activity over there which is like alarming, it will generate an alert.
So what happened yesterday night, we got an alert of a leopard movement. So once you see a leopard at a particular spot, that spot becomes very sensitive. This is approximately 1.2 to 1.3 kilometers away from the tower. We have informed the control room about what we have spotted and where we have spotted. As you know, cattle movement is a very low priority alert, but a leopard was spotted at that particular region, and after a period of time you saw the cattle movement there. So the cattle movement becomes a high priority alert because the chances of human animal conflict increases there.
जो भी कोई घटना होती है उसका एक मैसेज ऑटोमेटिक जनरेट होता है, तो वो हमारे पास आता है, मेरे पास आता है, मेरे डीएफओ के पास आता है, तो वो मैसेज तत्काल अपन सबऑर्डिनेट स्टाफ को ट्रांसफर कर देते हैं।
जानवर दिखा हुआ है, अभी फोन आया उसका, यहाँ से पूरे जानवर हटाओ और फिर ये नीचे ले जाओ, तो ये पीछे निकाल के घर ले जाओ।
So we are working on these kind of scenarios where the priority of the alert changes based on the situation or the previous data. So that is kind of intelligence we are trying to add to the system. As you know, this area was prone to human-animal conflict, and there was nothing like coexistence, which was what department wanted. So after the installation of this system, the concept of coexistence has been promoted, and no any such human casualty has been reported till date. So we see it like in next 5 years, we want to at least cover 50% of the tiger reserves that are there in India. Apart from tigers, there are other places also which we see the applicability of electronic, like places which are close to railway lines where the elephants and the tigers are being hit by railways. So these kind of incidences can also be prevented.